Quick question. Who do you think is happier? The Olympic silver medalist or the bronze medalist? Most people say silver. Psychologists discovered something strange. Bronze medalists often appear happier. Why? Because the silver medalist looks up. I almost won gold. The bronze medalist looks down. I almost left with nothing. Same event, same podium, different comparison. And that's the disturbing part, because happiness isn't determined only by what you have, it's determined by what your brain compares it to. Which raises a bigger question. If happiness can change because of a comparison, then what happens when the thing you're comparing is money, or success, or the life you've spent years trying to build? To answer that, we need to go back to 1971. Two psychologists, Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell, are sitting with a question that seems almost too obvious to bother asking. Do people who achieve extraordinary things feel extraordinary happiness? They decide to find out. Two groups: lottery winners, people who experienced sudden life-changing financial windfalls, and accident victims, people who had permanently lost the use of their limbs. Now, before you hear the result, notice what you're expecting. The lottery winners should be significantly happier. That's the obvious answer, the one that confirms everything we believe about money and success and the entire point of all this effort. That's not what happened. Within 1 year, the lottery winners reported nearly identical levels of life satisfaction as the accident victims. Not similar, identical. The people who won everything and the people who lost something irreplaceable both returned to almost exactly the same baseline they had before. Brickman and Campbell sat with that data for a while. Then they named what they were looking at. They called it the hedonic treadmill. A treadmill moves. You move with it, you burn enormous energy. You go nowhere. But wait, if this were actually true, wouldn't we know it by now? Wouldn't every person who got rich just tell us? Here's the thing, they do. We just don't listen, because we're too busy assuming we'll be the exception. Everyone who has ever thought, I'll be different once I get there, which is everyone, has thought exactly what the last person thought before them, and the person before that. Here's something the self-help industry has quietly decided not to put on the cover. Your brain was not designed to be satisfied. And before you take that personally, this isn't a character flaw. You didn't fail some happiness exam. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is it was built for a completely different world. The mechanism is called hedonic adaptation, and it works like this. Something new enters your life: a raise, a promotion, an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. Your brain fires a dopamine signal, the reward response, the feeling of yes, this finally. But the brain isn't designed to sustain that signal. The moment it registers the new thing as safe, stable, and no longer novel, it recalibrates, resets. The new apartment becomes the apartment. The raise becomes the salary. The extraordinary quietly becomes the expected. And then, almost immediately, the brain starts scanning for the next thing. Now, here is where it gets almost funny. This mechanism exists because, 50,000 years ago on the African savanna, contentment was fatal. The early humans who got comfortable, who looked at their food supply and thought, yeah, this is plenty, I'm good, those humans did not survive long winters. The ones who survived were the ones who always wanted a little more, a little further, a little safer, never quite settled. So, your brain inherited that wiring, the anxiety, the restlessness, the persistent sense that something is still missing. That's not neurosis. That's a competitive advantage from the Pleistocene epoch, running on hardware that hasn't been updated in 50 millennia. Your brain is essentially a 50,000-year-old survival machine that has been handed a salary, a smartphone, and a credit limit, and it is absolutely baffled by all three. It kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. It is now making you feel vaguely dissatisfied with a perfectly good life because someone on the internet has a nicer kitchen. Evolution is not sorry. Evolution does not do apologies.
In 2010, two economists, Angus Deaton and Daniel Kahneman, both future Nobel laureates, published one of the most argued about studies in the psychology of money. They analyzed the responses of 450,000 Americans. They were mapping the relationship between income and emotional well-being, and they found a threshold. Below it, money genuinely transforms your life. It removes fear. It buys options. It eliminates the specific grinding stress of wondering whether you can cover a bill. Below this threshold, more money absolutely means more well-being. That part is real. But above it, The curve flattens almost completely. The number they found was $75,000 a year. Economists still fight about the exact figure. A 2021 study by Matthew Killingsworth put it higher, others put it lower. Cost of living matters, city matters. The specific number isn't the point. The shape of the curve is the point. Past a certain threshold, more money stops producing more happiness. What it produces instead, and this is the part worth sitting with, is more wanting. And here's what should genuinely unsettle you. When researchers asked people across income levels how much happier they'd be if they doubled their salary, the predictions were wildly optimistic. Every time. They doubled the salary, the baseline reset within months. The wanting returned. The wanting was always more vivid than the having would ever be. You already knew this somewhere. You felt it. The thing you wanted, then got, then stopped thinking about within weeks. The data just tells you it wasn't an accident. It wasn't ingratitude. It was the system working exactly as designed. Quick pause, just for a second. If you're watching this on your phone right now, maybe lying down, maybe half distracted, maybe with a tab open in the background with something you've been thinking about buying, the irony of that is not lost on me. You're watching a video about why wanting more doesn't make you happier while wanting more. Same. That's not a criticism. That's just what it looks like to be a human being with a 50,000-year-old brain and a 4G connection. The treadmill doesn't pause while you learn about the treadmill. That would be too convenient. Let's keep going. There's a concept in behavioral economics called lifestyle creep. It has no dramatic moment, no single bad decision you can point to. It happens the way a tide comes in, so gradually that you don't notice until everything around you has already shifted. You get a promotion. You move to a slightly better apartment. Reasonable. You've earned it. You start eating at better restaurants, occasionally. You take business class on the long flights, just once, just to see what it's like. Each decision makes complete sense in isolation. Each one feels proportional to where you are now. But watch what hedonic adaptation does to every single one of those upgrades. It makes them invisible. The better apartment becomes background noise within 3 months. Business class becomes the thing you genuinely resent giving up. The restaurant that was once a special occasion is now a regular Thursday. And the new floor of normal, the one that felt like a reward when you reached it, now requires more income just to maintain, not to advance, just to stand still. The data on this is almost darkly funny. As income rises across all brackets, spending rises at almost exactly the same rate. High earners frequently save smaller percentages of their income than moderate earners, not because they're reckless, but because their definition of ordinary expands as fast as their means allow. The treadmill accelerates. They run faster. They stay exactly where they are. But the treadmill doesn't operate alone. There's a second mechanism. Older, quieter, and in some ways more destructive than adaptation by itself. The philosopher H.L. Mencken put it this way: a wealthy man is one who earns $100 more than his wife's sister's husband. He was joking. He was also describing a neurological reality. Research in social psychology has consistently shown that your satisfaction is not measured in absolute terms. It's measured relative to a reference group. You don't feel rich by calculating your net worth. You feel rich or poor by looking sideways. For most of human history, that sideways glance was bounded by geography, your neighbors, your village, the people physically present in your life. The comparison had natural limits. But then we built a machine that removed every limit at once. Social media is not, at its core, a communication platform. It is a comparison engine, one algorithmically optimized to show you the most aspirational, curated, financially polished version of the largest possible number of people continuously in your pocket. Your reference group is now effectively infinite, and here's the part the platform will never put in a press release. The research suggests that the more time you spend on social comparison, any social comparison, upward or lateral, the further your satisfaction baseline drops, regardless of what your actual financial situation is. Your brain evolved to compare itself to 30 people in a tribe. We handed it 30 million, simultaneously, every day. The treadmill was already moving. Then we installed a motor.
There is a word that appears with striking, almost uncomfortable frequency in the psychological literature on very wealthy people: anxiety. In 2011, researchers at Boston College studied individuals with assets exceeding $25 million. These are not people worried about covering rent. These are people whose grandchildren could live without working. And the overwhelming pattern in their responses was not contentment. It was a quiet, persistent unease, a sense that the threshold of security kept moving just slightly ahead of them, that some undefinable amount of more was still required. One respondent described waking at 4 a.m. with the specific, detailed fear that his wealth wasn't enough. He had $25 million. He was awake at 4 a.m., afraid. Now, you might want to dismiss this. Part of you is probably already forming the thought, that's not a money problem, that's a personality problem. I'd sleep fine with $25 million. Maybe, but that prediction, the confident belief that you'd be the exception, is exactly what the lottery winners said before they won, and we know how that one ends. The treadmill doesn't check your net worth before deciding to keep moving. It just moves. And here, finally, the research does something unexpected. Because while hedonic adaptation applies to almost every material acquisition, scientists discovered it doesn't apply equally to everything. Certain things genuinely resist the reset, and they are almost never the things we spend the most money chasing. Here's a concrete example. Imagine two versions of the same year. In version 1, you get a significant raise. You upgrade your car, move to a bigger apartment, start buying better things. Each upgrade feels good for a few weeks. By December, it's all background. You feel roughly the same as you did in January, just with higher monthly expenses. In version 2, you take 2 weeks completely off. No schedule, no deliverables, actual recovery. You have 6 dinners with people who matter to you. You spend 3 months working on something that was yours, something you chose, with no one telling you when to start or stop. By December, in version 2, you actually remember the year. The dinners are stories now. The work is something you're proud of. The autonomy, the felt sense that your time was yours, didn't normalize the way the car did. The research behind this pattern is consistent. Experiences resist adaptation more than possessions. Relationships resist adaptation more than status. Autonomy, genuine control over how you spend your hours, produces durable satisfaction in a way that a larger salary in a job you resent simply cannot replicate. This is not advice to spend on experiences instead of things. That's a bumper sticker, and bumper stickers are for cars, not psychology. The real finding is structural. The wants that the treadmill can't keep up with, the ones that actually compound over time, are mostly not for sale. They require decisions about how you design your days, what you protect, what you refuse, what you keep doing when the money stops being the reason. You can't buy your way off the treadmill, but you can, quietly, start walking in a different direction.
We come back to the Olympic podium. The silver medalist looking up, the bronze medalist looking down. And we start to understand something we didn't quite have the words for at the beginning. Not that winning is a mistake, not that success is meaningless, or that wanting things is shameful. They worked. They earned it. None of that is wrong. The thing we understand now is what they believed the medal would unlock, a specific feeling of having finally crossed the threshold, of the fear stopping, of arrival being real and permanent and something you could rest inside. They didn't know, when they were imagining this moment from 8 years away, that the brain doesn't work that way. The threshold moves. It always moves. Moving is literally its only function. The athlete steps off the podium. They go home. They're not devastated. They're not having a breakdown. They are just, for the first time, asking a different question. Not how do I win more, but what was I actually trying to feel? The hedonic treadmill is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that you're ungrateful, broken, or spiritually deficient. It's not something you fix with a gratitude journal or a mindfulness app or a weekend retreat, though none of those things are bad. It is a biological mechanism, ancient, automatic, and almost completely invisible to the people running on it, because you cannot see the treadmill from inside the treadmill. But here's what the research quietly suggests, underneath all the studies and the Nobel Prizes and the 4 a.m. billionaires. The goal was never the number. The goal was always the feeling, the specific feeling you decided a certain number would produce: safety, freedom, respect, the end of the fear. Those feelings are real, they're worth pursuing, but they are not stored in the object. They are not waiting on the other side of the next salary threshold. They live somewhere the treadmill can't reach, in the conversation that actually mattered, in the afternoon nobody else had a claim on, in the work you'd have done even if nobody paid you for it. The athlete on the podium is still holding that medal. And maybe the most honest thing you can say about all of this, about the hedonic treadmill, about wanting, about the entire strange project of building a life, is this: we built a civilization on the assumption that wanting leads to having, leads to satisfaction. 2 out of 3 isn't bad, it's just not enough.